Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For this updated pre-analysis guide for Aventurine, I'll be talking about his best relic, Lightcones, team comp, rotations, pros and cons. And if you should pull for him. Do note that this is all speculation and subjected to changes. Here are his required materials and skill priority. For an overview on his kit, Aventurine is a 2-in-1 unit. From the path of the preservation, he has one of the best survivability in the game, and does even more follow-up attack with FUA units, which gives him a ton of DPS. His tailor-made for follow-up attack units. He would also work for Acheron if you have his signature LC. Other crit DPS units will have little to no benefit from Aventurine. Other than follow-up attack units, it beats the point of pulling for him if you can't put him in the best setup. For his Eidolons, E1 increases crit damage for allies with X effect by X%. The X effect obtained from his trace bonus no longer has a trigger limit. E2 when using basic attack, reduce the target's all-type res by X% for X turns. E4 when triggering his talent's follow-up attacks, Aventurine's defense first increases by X% for X turns. The follow-up attack's hits per action triggered by his talent additionally increases by X. E6. For each ally with shield, the damage dealt by Aventurine increases by X%, up to a maximum of X%. For his best price to performance ratio, it's situational. His E1 is way better than his Sig LC if you're running Topaz and follow-up attack units. For players who are pulling him only for Acheron, his Sig LC is a must with his E2 at max. Wouldn't recommend pulling Aventurine without his LC for Acheron, as Fushwen would do better. Players should also not forget that Aventurine's best team is with follow-up ATK units. Overall, would recommend F2P players to stick with E0 as is sufficient, especially when we are getting a free S5 Lightcone tailor-made for him. How to build Aventurine. For the body, you want defense % only. For the boots, you want speed only. Sub-stat priority. The best build would be speed till 147 at max, as much defense % as you can get. Crit damage and some crit rate slightly. Lastly, do not go for HP % or effect res, as it's a dead stat on him. More defense equals better shielding and DPS. Players should aim for speed and crit substats on defense % main stat pieces. You may run 144 SPD if you are putting Ruan Mei together for the 161 speed breakpoint, but 147 speed is safer for any switch up in your team, and Aventurine has high base speed too. Wouldn't worry about it. Only with Acheron to focus more on his debuffs. Without Ruan Mei may go for a total of 160 or 161 SPD instead, and defense %, do not care about other stats. With Ruan Mei, go for 157 SPD instead, but both are still insanely hard to hit, where players would need triple S tier substats. Recommended to stick with the previous build as it's way harder, but it may perform slightly better. Onto his Relic Set. First place is 2-piece Messenger with 2-piece Grand Duke. Or you can go for the full Rainbow Set with 0 set bonuses, as substat is way more important for Aventurine. Second best is Dead Waters, where it provides 8% crit rate and provides the highest DPS for Aventurine, which is highly recommended for FUA teams. Third is Knight of Purity Palace with the 4-piece bonus for 20% damage absorbed by the shield created by the wearer. The reason why I'm placing this at last place is that even with the 20% bonus shield effect, it only makes a difference for his skill. His talent bonus shield is too little for it to make a difference. Even though it's his best defensive set, it's not worth it, due to energy efficiency, and players pulling for Aventurine who are running with FUA teams will benefit way more hugely from a DPS set. Overall, players should just slap on DPS sets, as Aventurine does not need to care about Relic Set bonus for survivability, as defense % main stat plus LC would be more than sufficient. And now for the Planar Ornament. Main stat for the rope and orb, you want both of them to run defense %. As the more defense you have, the easier your team survives and you deal more damage. You don't need energy regen rope on Aventurine at all due to low ulti cost, and his main energy source comes from his follow-up attack, which activates more with FUA units. Hence I don't recommend players to pull Aventurine for Acheron or other crit DPS units, as his ulti uptime, which can apply to buffs, will have way lower downtime. Aventurine has 3 of Planar Ornaments set which he can use. Best in slot is Inert Salsado, especially with FUA units, where the 5% crit rate boost actually helps a ton, plus the damage boost is really neat. Second best in slot is Broken Keel or Fleet of the Ageless, as long as you meet their requirements and have double S tier substats on them. but still preferred to run with Topaz plus a secondary DPS unit to minimize the DPS loss. I wouldn't recommend Architects as it's the worst choice. Aventurine can easily hit over 4k defense with 3 defensive main stats with Defense, Lightcone and Technique, which is already overkill where 15% defense bonus wouldn't make a difference. Would be way better to focus on providing more DPS to himself or other units. Unless you have this relic set with triple S tier, it's a very solid option. Overall, players should slap on the one with better substat as they're very equal. But I do recommend Salsado since and those who have FUA units are already farming World 6 like crazy. Now for his light cones, I'll start from the worst to best. At last place, we have both the Battle Pass LC and Day 1 of my new life at S5, nothing much to talk about as there are way better options. At third place, we have Jeopard's Lightcone, which is S1 sufficient. Its base defense is way higher and it gives a total of 48% defense if the wearer gets attacked, which means more DPS and survivability for Aventurine. Though one minor issue is the extra aggro draw may put Aventurine at risk of losing health by getting hit more often, which results in using more skill points. Still a solid Lightcone option for Aventurine, but it's better for Fushuen or other units. At second place, we have 2 Lightcones. The new F2 PLC from the mirror gives effect res instead of defense, which is honestly trash for Aventurine, as his kit already gives a ton of effect res and can resist CC from his talent, but the main upside is the 48% damage increase where it only falls slightly behind his SIG LC. Only recommended for players who have a total of 4k defense at minimum as it comes with quite a few downsides. The real MVP is the free Lightcone at S5 that we will be getting, which increases both defense and DMG for the wearer. Without doubt, it's his second best option even over the LC from the mirror shop as it doesn't come with any drawbacks and it's way easier to build Aventurine with the defense bonus. I highly recommend this LC instead as the DPS loss is only by a few percent compared to Destiny. After all, Aventurine main priority is keeping your team alive, with more defense equals to lesser skill point usage. Also at first place you may use Universal Market Lightcone if you're running Aventurine with Acheron, where is able to apply debuffs from this Lightcone. Even at S1 it's highly recommended as the uptime for debuff application is on par or better than his signature LC. For the dot in general playstyle, this Lightcone will be at third or last place instead. At first place, it's his signature LC, increases the wearer's defense by X%. When the wearer provides a shield to an ally, the wearer's crit damage increases by X%, lasting for X turns. When the wearer uses a follow-up attack, there is a X% base chance to increase the DMG taken by the attacked enemy by X%, lasting for X turns. Here are his DPS calculations. It's either 13 or 17% DPS over the event S5 Lightcone. Overall, players should not pull for Aventurine Lightcone but his E1 instead if they have spare pulls, as the free LC at S5 from the event is more than enough for Aventurine. If you're running him with Acheron you can pull for his SIG LC instead, though it may be better to pull for Acheron's LC or E2 instead. And now for his team comp, rotations and how his ability works. The best DPS team is with Topaz plus a secondary FUA unit with Ruan Mei. Aventurine is good at 147 speed, but with Ruan Mei you can opt for 144 speed instead. This team comp allows him to do more follow-up attacks with follow-up attacks from other units, especially with Topaz. They're both going to scale each other up way higher. His weaker team would be with Acheron or other crit DPS units, as E0 Aventurine can apply debuff with his ulti, which increases a very tiny amount of crit damage dealt for your allies, which only provides 4% DPS boots, whereas huohuo ulti provides 8% DPS instead, and Aventurine ulti uptime would be lower without FUA units. For Aventurine's pros and cons. Pros: triple S tier unit with follow-up attack units, especially Topaz. Won't get outscaled with Topaz or FUA units. F2P friendly. Comes with a free best in slot S5 Lightcone. Easy to build. SP positive. Decent animations. One of the best survivability units in the game. Even his Eidolons doesn't need more sustain. Good for events, pure fiction. Drops to S tier without FUA units, even with higher Eidolons, as the only plus point is his survivability. Must have SIG LC to do well for Acheron. So should you pull for Aventurine? If you already have 2 limited 5-star sustains but you are running follow-up attack units, especially Topaz? Yes, without a single doubt. If you're running Acheron with Aventurine SIG LC? Yes. If you're running other crit DPS units? No, it's pretty bad. If you like his design? Yes, and that's it for this guide.